Hi everyone, this is 7th Circle Gaming, and today we're talking about Empire of Sin, a game I do have some experience with prior to starting the channel, but don't expect that to interfere with our usual objectivity. So, without further ado, let's get started with full disclosure. Pause the video now and read through these at your leisure, and we're going to move right on to Immersion, in which we attempt to answer the question, how is the game going to get players invested into the game world? Now, obviously, for an audio-visual medium, the game is going to need to be using presentation. The game employs multiple perspectives over the course of play, scene, top-down, isometrics, even a visual novel. I swear if we even looked hard enough, we could find a side-scrolling beat-em-up level of the game. Which, on the other hand, the game world is fairly realistic. Gravity works like it does in the real world. There are no aliens or monsters in this particular game, so pretty relatable. In addition to that, the game employs what we call statistics focus. There are statistics for almost every in-game object. Understanding them is very important to progressing through the game, and there are multiple levels of statistics to analyze in this game. We are going to show you what one of the screenshots of that looks like, but frankly, if we talked about all of the, or showed examples of all of the statistics from this game, the video would be 30 minutes long. So, in addition to that, the game is going to attempt to get players invested into the game world with challenge. And there are, broadly speaking, two types of challenge that the game uses on different levels. The overworld, which is the larger city, the game uses or has strategic puzzles for players to solve. On the more street level, the game's puzzles are much more of a tactical and light strategy nature mostly. That's going to come in the form of which NPCs to take with on missions or into instanced combat. The game is also going to use audio to attempt to immerse players into the game world, and what we're going to be hearing is environmental noises, cars, gun sounds, and voices. This is a voiced protagonist in this game, unlike some others. We're going to hear some 1920s type music, and in addition, the game is going to be using a light amount of player agency to get players invested into the game world, which is largely to say that each playthrough is defined or shaped by the decisions players make in it. It doesn't seem like there's an awful lot of appearance modification to be done. Even purchasing different hats or things doesn't really change the appearance of the character. However, choosing a different weapon does. So that's really all there is as far as appearance goes. But almost every property that the player controls can be renamed to whatever the player would like. Finally, the game uses a story to attempt to immerse players into the game world. Again, this is a pretty light touch on story. But overall, the game has earned a 12 out of 15 for immersion. And let's move on because we do have a couple of screenshots to show off. The first one just supports the idea that this is a game world that looks very much like the real world. Gravity works like we would expect it to, and that could be almost any city in the world. So, all fairly relatable as far as that goes. The next screen that we're going to look at is the overworld, as we'd called it. It's supposed to be a large city, and the different buildings here represent my little colored boxes on a hillside. All have different icons and different missions attached to for players to interact with. Then there's also this screen. We did say that we weren't going to show off all of the different ways that statistics are interacted with in this game. This is just one of many statistics focused screens. And finally, there is this screen, which is the visual novel style story interlude. It's from the start of the game, but it does seem like the interludes are specific instances are tied to specific events in the game. And again, it does seem like it's a fairly light touch. So then, since there's no more to say about immersion, let's move on to difficulty. And the game has earned a 3 out of 15 for difficulty. It provides players with 3 sliders to adjust different difficulty settings or settings that might impact difficulty. These are discrete positions, so there's no possibility of a 0.5 or a 0.7 on these. It's all one or the other. There are no descriptions of what those are going to do for the player or how they're going to affect gameplay. The game does claim it can be played with a gamepad or a keyboard. However, in our experience during the evaluation, playing the game with a gamepad did require some significant adjustment, and we uncovered some unexpected results with the gamepad. So do be aware of that. The user interface for the game is reasonable for all of the genres that the game is trying to put together, and the mouse over bubbles that pop up are going to be somewhat useful to players. So then, we talked about that difficulty screen a bit. Let's show what it really looks like. And, oh dear, that's not much. Oh well. So the less said about that, the better. Let's move on to Lasting Appeal, where we attempt to answer the question of what is going to keep players playing through the game to story end, and what might be their reason for playing through it a second time. Well, first of all, the game does have some DLC and it does support modding. It does seem, however, like the DLC has finished, so there's nothing more to expect there, but obviously there's always going to be mods for everything. Uh, just how much the game can be modded is, you know, not outside the scope of this particular video. It's possible that players will want to play the game on a higher or lower difficulty, or retry with one of the many different starting characters that all have different skills, bonuses, and disadvantages attached to them. Players may also, with a game like this, want to play through the game with what we're calling a themed playthrough, and that could be almost anything from playing through the game with only pistols, or trying all of the exploits, none of the exploits, or any other of multiple different combinations. However, from our experience playing on the normal difficulty, what the game calls Lieutenant, or Lieutenant, if you're in the UK, it does seem like the game requires 30 minutes an hour for the player to see progress in the game. It's noticeable, so expect to be playing for about that amount of time. And with that, let's move on, because we're going to next talk about the overall score. Overall, the game has earned a 7 out of 15. It's entirely possible that mods will really increase the appeal of the game, that players might find one they really like. As we said earlier, the game claims to be playable with a controller or a keyboard, but it does seem from our experience like the mouse was preferred. Well, not to fixate on the idea of unexpected results, but don't be surprised if there are unexpected things that happen from using the gamepad. The game could be described as overwhelming because it is combining several different types of game. There's isometric RPGs, management games, squad tactics games, or it could be exactly what the player is looking for because they want a game that they're going to get value for money from. So could be said about this game too. The difficulty options are fairly limited. And the story, if that's what the player is really looking for, expecting a story-focused game, the story seems to lack relevance. It's a very light touch. So, all in all, some players may find that 7 is moved up to a 7.5, but for the average player, a 7 seems to be a reasonable score. Now then, we'll just add congratulations, you've reached the end of the video. Hope you found it entertaining or interesting, and from all of us at 7th Circle Gaming,